Hello, cosmic beings out there. I'm Mannah, a therapeutic astrologer and interviewer. I'm passionate about learning and sharing insights on how to live a better life. I hope you'll stick around as I infiltrate the minds of thought leaders, authors, and healers from around the globe. Wherever you find yourself right now, dear listener, I want you to remember that you have a place to call whole. Now please enjoy this episode. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Tap into the theme of sensitivity. I'm joined by Brid O'Donoghue. Welcome, Brid.
Thank you.
The author of The Mystery of the Sensitive Child. Also the author of the Psychic Code, and you are a psychic healer and a writer. And today we'll be talking about the mystery of the sensitive child. I think the mystery of sensitivity altogether, right? It's such a profound theme.
It's a fascinating topic, yes.
Yeah.
I personally, yes, I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's one that's very, very important to me.
Yeah.
So I think for us growing up, even though I'm an awful lot older than you are, Mannah, there wasn't an understanding, and there certainly wasn't any tools or explanations to help us to come to terms with our levels of sensitivity. But now 2024, almost 2025, for me, like, this has to change. It should not be this difficult for children going through the school system and finding their way and navigating through the world. Like, this has to catch up now, and things have to be put in place for these children.
Yes, please. And I mean, yeah, you're talking about this. We have some age between us, but even so, I really recognize that's maybe a scary part of it, is that I still recognize some of what you say in the book about your upbringing and your time in the system. So, I mean, but yeah, I think definitely it is absolutely changing just because of this wave of enlightening on this area, which you're really contributing to. I just want to say that you are dedicating this book to all who find themselves challenged by the levels of sensitivity. And you define sensitivity as someone who senses other people's needs, problems, feelings, or pain, and show compassion for what the other person is going through. And so now I really want to ask you, how can this even be a challenge, right? How can sensitivity, when it's such a human quality as what you're just saying, how can the levels of sensitivity be a challenge?
Okay, so I think, like, sensitivity is absolutely a part of the person. It's like our genetics. You can't say to somebody you have to change your eye color. Well, I suppose there's probably ways of doing that now, but sensitivity is our core. But there's different levels of sensitivity. I describe it like a builder's spirit level. So most people tend to be in the bubble in the middle of the spirit level, and they look at other people and think, oh, that's where they're at. They're smiling, they're happy, they're sad, whatever. They go by the demeanor and what's presented in front of them. As we come up along, we come to the sensitive person who senses their environment. They go into the room and they go, oh, I don't like it in here. But there's no obvious reason. So to the people in the bubble, it's just a child being difficult. It's like, just sit down and do what you're told. Or they sense what's going on around them, but they have no explanation for it. And so if the adult in charge or the person with their care doesn't understand this child is sensing things, then it's a challenge. And then the greater the level of sensitivity, the more they're impacted by others, the more they're impacted by their environment. And again, without understanding or tools, then it becomes a challenge. But with the tools and with the understanding, then it becomes an amazing ability. So it's to get it to there, to get it to be understood, to give them the tools, to give them the language, so that then these fabulous children with this heightened sensitivity can actually really contribute to their environment. But until then, they're the child that's teased, they're the child that's withdrawn, they're the child that's hitting out, they're the problem child. But it's the lack of knowledge and understanding that's the problem, not the child.
Yeah, it's really a sensitive thing to read your book as well.
It is.
Because it takes you back to, well, yeah, the time in school and all the misunderstandings that come from it. But I think it is important that we underscore and emphasize both things, right? The quality of it as well, and the spiritual quality of it, and then of course that you can be misunderstood. Because you are, for example, you are Cancer rising. That's just one aspect of your chart, but and you do a lot of healing work, right? And you know, with psychic work. So that's the very same emotional quality. I don't know if you would call it emotional, but in terms of archetypes, I would say that that is a level of it, because it's that level of attunement to either another person or to something higher than that. How do you feel about that?
So for me, I definitely feel attunement, or in line with, it's like my absolute belief. I absolutely believe there's a higher power, and I personally communicate with that power. And it's part of what I teach people when I teach them about their sensitivity and their empathy, that if they believe in a higher power, then they can tap into that and use their gift along with that connection. So people that are highly sensitive or empathic, as you go further up the scale, you go from sensitivity to empathy. This sensitive child senses there's a problem. The empath feels there's a problem. They feel the pain. They feel the distress. They feel the anxiety. They feel the anger. So if it comes to our awareness that there's somebody in our environment that is struggling emotionally or physically, we can, through our connection with a higher power, ask for divine or angelic or spiritual intervention for the person. If we have that belief system.
Great. Yeah.
So, because for a lot of people, we have the awareness that somebody's struggling, and unfortunately, then a lot of us highly sensitive people then take it on board ourselves that we need to fix the problem. And it has nothing to do with us most of the time. And we just end up getting stuck in stuff that has nothing to do with us. Whereas if we have a belief system or a spiritual side or a spiritual connection, we can ask that higher power, once we have the awareness, oh, somebody around me is in trouble, we can ask that higher power, please shine a light on this person that's struggling. Please shine a light on whoever's energy I'm picking up on. Please assist whoever owns this depression. Please help whoever, or, help them to find their way.
Right. Now,
but it's not for us to fix it. It's between the person and their higher power. But we're just asking for the light to shine.
Right. I see. Okay, it's good. So I'll let the listeners know that we are up against some internet delays.
Oh, are we? Oh dear.
As we speak, but we'll manage, and we'll just pause a little more to be sure that I'm not interrupting you. But I see. I think I get what you're saying about. So yeah, not expecting to fix it yourself, and also like cleansing your energy field is what I'm hearing you talk about. So becoming aware that when you are sensitive, you're more open to other people's energies and negativity.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like being like a giant sponge.
Yeah.
I talk to children about SpongeBob. I don't know if you know SpongeBob, the character.
Yeah.
And I tell them that they're like SpongeBob. Yeah. And if SpongeBob goes into a big muddy puddle with his friends, that he will soak up all the mud and he won't be able to play. But his friends won't even know that they're in the mud. They'll get a little bit muddy, but they can still play. But he's soaked up everything, and so he can't play with his friends. So it's just coming to the awareness of what's going on around us, and teaching the child about grounding skills. The more grounded we are, child or adult, the less we get pulled into other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody needs grounding. So grounding, I teach them grounding, but separately I teach them disconnecting tools. So everybody needs to be able to ground, but the sensitive person needs to also be able to disconnect from the energy of others. So it's like they need two separate sets of tools.
It's an interesting work with disconnection, right? Because that's usually some kind of contraction when we talk the therapeutic world. But that's it's really good because I want to also talk about something very, yeah, I really like the way that you describe this in the book. You say switching off becomes a normal way of being. So I'm sure that's not what you mean about disconnecting here, but then that just gives you an opportunity to what's actually the difference between the tools that you are teaching these children to, disconnection, and then actually what goes on a more automatic level where I say we because I recognize myself so much in it, we tend to switch off emotions.
Yes.
Switch off emotions. Yeah. What's the difference?
Okay. So switching off. So where we started off at the beginning of the conversation, I was saying how kids don't have the tools because they're not taught. And so they have to come up with their own ways of coping or their own ways of dealing with the bombardment of energy that's coming in on them. So the one that I used throughout my childhood, I call switching off. So school was extremely difficult and I'm dyslexic. And back in that day, we were beaten for every spelling wrong and all that kind of thing. And we were taught through fear. Mm. So the whole classroom situation was highly emotive. And there was nothing I could do about it. I had to be present, but I couldn't cope with it. So I functioned. I sat in my seat. I went up and got slapped. I had another go at writing the spellings, went back up and got slapped, and just functioned. So I wasn't there. My body was there. I was functioning to the best of my ability, but emotionally, I stepped out. So I describe it like getting a balloon and tying it onto you, and you put your heart and soul into it. And when it's safe, you bring back in the balloon. So I turned up at school and behaved like a robot, but switched off. You're not there. So I have very few memories of school. Yeah. When I meet people that were in school with me, I actually don't remember them. Like I look at these people and think, I know you from somewhere, but I can't put it together that, oh yeah, you sat beside me. Because for most of it, I was literally functioning. So switching off, and I'm sure there's lots of more technical terms or terms used by therapists for switching off, but for me, it's where you're functioning, but almost robotically rather than from a place of emotion. And the body's very clever, but this technique, because I would have worked with lots of people where I would have seen images of abuse and horrible things that happened, it's the body's way of stepping out when horrible things are happening. You can't do anything about it. Your body's still there, but you're not present. And different people who I would have met who would have been abused or sexually abused or physically abused, they don't remember the events. They might remember a smell, they might remember a color, a t-shirt, random little pieces, but they don't remember the event because they stepped out or switched off. And so switching off is meant for this short period, or if it's repeated, but you're not meant to live there. So when you live there, it kind of turns everything upside down because we're the sensitive kid, we're the highly emotive kid. And where are you okay? Are you okay? What do you need? How do I protect you? How do I keep you safe? What am I going to do with that? But when we switch off, we jump sides. We go from being this person who cares about everybody to the other side of the ruler where we're in survival. What do I need to do to get through today? How do I do that? How do I make the grown-up happy? What do they want from me now? And how do I do this? we're no longer thinking about anybody else. We're not connected to anybody else. We're not emotionally connecting. We're not sensitively tuning into them. We are completely in survival. And we hop over to the narcissistic side. The longer we stay on that side of the ruler, the further down the scale of emotional capacity. And those that are switched off 24/7 slide further and further down towards the narcissist.
Mm. And so exactly that with the disconnection, you were just saying that you had a tool, yeah, that you call actually disconnection, but that's something
Okay.
else,
So
right?
that's the different thing. So switching off is when you're not there emotionally. Disconnecting is the absolute opposite. It's where you're disconnecting from the other person's energy, but you are 100% present and in your own body and functioning emotionally just as yourself. So the tools to be able to disconnect from that person's energy and be 100% present, heart open, and functioning with your thoughts and your ideas and emotionally present. So tools to literally teach the child how to come in. And once they're able to disconnect, if safe to do so, they no longer need to switch off.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. Good. That's a good clarification.
Okay.
But that, and it's definitely, I really recognize it when I read about it. Um, the word would be dissociation, I think, in therapy language,
Yes.
but I like different words for it, right? Because it's such a weird experience. But I recognize my childhood in anything to do with any way that dissociation is described. For example, the description that you see other people like it's a movie and you're just like seeing it. I really remember that
Mm,
that frustrated me a lot, that there was no way
mm.
that I could get into the movie, that feeling. So, I mean, it's different, but it's nuances, right?
Yes. And I love that idea of watching the movie because we would have watched the movie, but in that space, I don't remember a lot of the movie. So I don't know if you remember the movie
Oh, right. Like what
when
movie?
you were in school.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, in school in particular, because I'm thinking also about I had a religious upbringing, so I came into many meetings with other kids. So actually, I was thinking of those meetings. But in school, I remember the frustration of sitting down and wanting this time to remember, like, man, at this time, I want to listen. And then, the bell would ring. I would just have no idea where I went. Like just
Yes. Yeah.
hearing. And that I remember the frustration. So it must have happened, many times prior to that. But what I remember
Yes.
is the trying to stay there, and I couldn't. I mean, I don't know where I went.
And that's the thing, we're not daydreaming. It's different to daydreaming. Daydreaming, you're coming up with concepts and ideas.
Yeah.
You're, coming up, inventing something. We're
Yeah.
not inventing anything. We're literally physically present, but we're not emotionally there. And because it would have been our go-to as children, because we're so used to it, I can just switch off during the day, even though I no longer need to. It can be 10 o'clock and then it's 12 o'clock. And it's like, what happens? And I nearly have to really try and tune into, I nearly have to try and work out, well, what have I done for the last 2 hours? How is it 12 o'clock? Or if I'm driving, I wonder, have I gone through that town yet?
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually don't know where I am on the road.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I'm driving 5 minutes. So no, I haven't gone through it yet. Or I'm driving 20 minutes. So I must have gone through there because I've switched on for so much of my childhood that it just becomes a habit and way of being. So then I have to literally tell myself it's safe to switch on. It's safe to be in my body. And to literally tell myself to come back in. So what I do is I take a deep breath and tell myself it's safe to be in my body. And one down into my feet, it's safe to be present.
Yeah, it is so important because it sets you up, that childhood of dissociation and switching off emotion. It sets you up for so many traumas, right? Like I'm even thinking about just
Yes.
this fawning response, or having sex with someone without being there, and then when you cannot be present in the sexual act, then you can be intimate with people that you're not connected to emotionally.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. It's just there's just so many scenarios with this that
There's so many.
yeah.
There's so many.
Mm.
And because I talk directly to children and or to their moms, um, like disassociation isn't going to work for a 4-year-old, but they'll get the light switch. You know, you're switching off, and we
Yeah.
need to switch back on again. They can see that. So it's to be able to talk to them in a language that they'll understand. And a lot of the books have been bought by the moms. So again, for them to understand in the language that we use in every day, um,
It's
that
a really good
that
image.
would.
Yeah, it keeps it real. It's a good image. So just because we are challenged a little bit with sound, I'm just gonna go straight to a few more questions, and then
Okay.
probably gonna make
Okay.
it a little shorter, just because it's but you are here, and I'm so glad, because you're a traveling woman, right? Now you're in Ireland, but you're also in Australia, and so I'm really glad that we got this time with you, and I want to use it wisely. So I want to ask you about the two running emotional programs that you talk about. Can you explain that?
Okay. So again, this book is written like there's a chapter on child-friendly language, so that if a mom is aware that her child is highly sensitive and getting pulled into the emotions of others, that they can explain in child-friendly language what's going on, so that the child can picture it and then come to a way of understanding it, and then they can put the tools in place. Like if it's like, here's the tools, like, okay, what do I want it for? So they need to understand what's going on. One of the examples I give them is that we are like a computer, and if everybody if everybody's computer was running their program. So your program might be a little bit frustrated right now because of the technology that's not behaving. Um, my computer might be a little bit anxious because I'm being interviewed and the technology is not working. So I can pick up on your frustration and I can put it in on top of, I was calm 5 minutes ago, but now there's a bit of frustration coming in. So I am picking up on your stuff and putting it in on top of mine. And then if your program is much stronger than mine, so if you have a big emotion going on and I'm content enough with my day, your program can overrun mine. And
Mm.
then I can go into the frustration. So otherwise I ask the kids to think of their t-shirt, and if their t-shirt had a word on it to describe how they felt that day. And then what would Mammy's t-shirt say? And what would Daddy's t-shirt say? And what would the teacher's t-shirt say? And they can say, like, they just know, he's smiling, but he's cross. She's
A good
tired,
exercise.
And then these kids just go around putting on other people's invisible t-shirts. And then the stronger the emotion, the more chances there are that energy will override theirs, and they will start to behave tired, or they will start to behave frustrated, or they will start to behave um, whatever else is going on around them.
I really like that exercise. That's a good one.
Yeah. And they're very clever. Like when I meet little ones and they might say, um, in school, like if I say, okay, who's the anger? Where's the anger coming from? And they'll say, oh, Johnny that sits beside me, he's really angry. And if I say, why are you really sad in school, or who owns the sad t-shirt, they'll know it belongs to Sarah, it belongs to the girl beside me. Like they'll know who the t-shirt belongs to, even though nobody has told them, and that person is often wearing their happy face.
Wow.
But the child will know who the t-shirt belongs to.
Wow. Is this only
And then
with children?
no. So it's funny, I wrote the book for people to help the kids, but the number of people that have come back to me and said, I now understand my childhood.
Yeah.
is fascinating, because I hadn't thought of that when I wrote it. I thought this is going to give people the knowledge and the information to help the children, but instead it's helped the adults, and then hopefully in turn it will help the children.
No, it definitely has an impact as an adult as well when we read even something that's targeted for kids and for their parents, but just because, like, okay, this is what happened to me, right? And this is what the adults should have done. You know, this is what someone should have done. I mean, for me, there's a short distance between recognizing, okay, there was so much dissociation going on, giving me really bad conditions for learning and developing friendships and developing the developmental capacities, and then anger, right? Anger that no one did anything. So that comes up as part of it. And I don't know, do you use that? I don't know if you have that same anger, so I don't want to put that on you, but that mm, totally right and correct and appropriate emotion that something else should have happened. Do you use that emotion to contribute to what you're doing now, your work you're doing now with kids?
Okay, so I find often the energy that impacts us most is the one that was around us when we were small. So if you're around somebody where there is depression, depression would be the one that will trigger. If you're around someone where there's a real anger or a real sense of injustice going on, that's the one that will trigger us most. If you're around people that where there is grief, then that grief t-shirt, when you meet it, will be the one that impacts you most. So without putting you on the spot, I do wonder what t-shirts were around you when you were small. But one for me would definitely have been the injustice.
I like that. That's so interesting. You took it somewhere else. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll have a think about that. Okay. So everyone can actually do that. Think about what t-shirt or what emotion was very present and what emotional
Yes,
program was running in the background in your upbringing.
correct. Because it's really one of our keys. So if you were in a house where there was depression, when you meet somebody with depression, you go into that, but you don't realize it because you're so familiar with it and so comfortable in that old t-shirt, even though it was never yours, that you can end up in depression for ages without going, this makes no sense. Whereas if we step into so I'm the typical Virgo, so I'm the order and get things done and knock it out. And what's next? A, B, C. No, I can't do Z yet. I have to do D. But then if I go into the energy of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, I have to do a bit of that, nothing finished, lots of things started. Like that's not my energy. So I'll spot that very fast. But if I've picked up on the energy of one that I'm really familiar with from childhood, I could be in there for days without noticing this doesn't belong to me.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's some food for thought there. So when it's more familiar to you, you don't recognize it. You don't recognize it, even though it is dysfunctional, not serving you.
Yeah. So you talked earlier about anger. I want to save the day. I want things to change. I want things to be better. And like it wasn't there for us. And in hindsight, like the teachers, the nuns at the time, they didn't have the knowledge. And they like I really think my nun thought that by beating us, she was going to help us somehow, that we were going to learn the answer and that we would then be better able for the world if we knew the answer. I don't know what was going on there. But now, almost 2025, I really want this knowledge to go out. And so I'm starting to hear from teachers that are beginning to put some of the tools in place, and it's fabulous. So whether we call it anger, for me, maybe it's more maybe the problem solver in me as well. I just want the tools put out there, and I want the knowledge to come now for these kids, because once it's understood, it's very straightforward. Grounding skills and disconnecting skills, and then child-friendly language, and the world can literally change.
I was just thinking the same. This is changing the world. these movements are changing the
Yeah.
world. Sensitivity movements are changing the world, and that is what we're going through. So I think that is something that we can pour whatever energy might be stuck. We can pour that into our life mission, our purpose. Right? It's like I'm here to make things different
Yes.
in myself and in the world. I wanted to ask you about the flaw in our fight or flight, that understanding of the nervous system. You have a flaw. Do you have another explanation for it?
Okay. So fight or flight is this ingenious technique that the caveman came up with, or hunter-gatherers, as he's more recently known as. So genius. So he goes over the hill, meets the scary bear, and his body develops fight or flight. So his pain threshold changes. He's pumping hormones so that he can run away from the scary bear. He like physically, his tummy goes, well, I'm not breaking down my food right now. So it chucks the food into the gut without breaking it down. The gut goes, well, there's a scary bear. I'm not going to do this right now. I'll get back to it later. So the flaw is the body can't tell the difference between scary bear and caveman tucked up safely in bed in his night at nighttime going, oh, what if there's a scary bear tomorrow? What if all the berries blow off the trees and we've nothing to eat? What if the firewood gets damp and I can't light the fire in the morning? What if somebody comes and steals my mate? What if the kids misbehave? So in the what if, the body thinks, oh, caveman's in danger here. And it starts to do all of that stuff that he invented for the actual moment. So the body can't, it behaves the same for the actual danger and the what if I'm in danger. And like, not everybody that's in fight or flight is there because of their sensitivity, but practically every sensitive child I have met spends a large amount of their time in fight or flight because they literally don't know what's going to happen once they go around the corner. They don't know how they're going to feel. They don't know how their body's going to respond. They can start crying. They can hit out at somebody without any realization they're about to hit at somebody. And then when they're asked, why did you hit that child? They can't explain it. Or they are in overdrive trying to control the situation because it's not in control. They're not in control. So they tend to live in fight or flight, which is not where we're supposed to live. It's supposed to be for the scary bear. And if we live there, the impact on the body is colossal.
Yeah, oh, so
and it just makes their life so much harder.
Yeah, so there's the stress of it and the rejection that you would receive because of your inappropriate behavior with that dysregulated nervous system. Yeah, I see. So the flaw, when you're talking about a flaw in it, it's that we can think our way into something that's where we are physically gonna react to danger.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And then in that space, it has lots of knock-ons. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, fight or flight, because it has so many things. Like your nervous system is just under strain the whole time. And then somebody just says the simplest thing, or somebody drops something, or a door slams, and the elastic band just snaps because there's nothing left, because you are living on the edge of heightened awareness. And so then in that space, we can snap and we can become the bear.
Yeah.
But we become the bear out of our wish and desire to keep everybody safe. Is everybody okay? What's going on over there? Are you all right? What's going to happen tomorrow? And because we're so sensitive and so aware of everybody else's feelings, that we are under such strain, that then we can look like the problem, because our tolerance, there's just nothing left in the tank, because we haven't slept properly, we're pumping hormone, and we can't hear properly because it changes our hearing levels. There's so many, like, we haven't got the good of our food because we're not digesting properly, and we've just nothing left. But we're there because of our sensitivity and our wish to make everybody in the world okay. And then we end up snapping, and then we're really cross with ourselves. So I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? And back again, back again.
Yeah, I really recognize that. I was just gonna say that when just before you said this last part, I was gonna say, oh, it's a very compassionate approach to being triggered, but then you have this last part. Exactly. Then what happens is I blame myself, right? I don't I don't want to react this way.
Yes.
And
that pushes the fight or flight. It's like, what did I do wrong? Why did I do that? I shouldn't have said that. What if they say something else? Oh, I know what I'll do the next time. But you're just feeding it. You're feeding the fight or flight. So I have a chapter in the book specifically on the fight or flight for the sensitive child. And there's a meditation in there as well for them. But just telling a child who's in heightened sensitivity, heightened fight or flight, you need to chill out, or I'm going to read you a meditation, is not going to work.
no.
They have to turn off. They have to turn off fight or flight first. They have to come off. I describe it like clinging onto the cliff edge by their fingernails. Like somebody clinging onto the side of a cliff that's like holding on for dear life. There's no point shouting down at them, try meditating.
No.
It's not going to work. They have to get off the cliff first, and then they can use all those lovely tools. Then they can do their breathing exercises. Then they can do their walk. Then they can do their meditation. But they have to turn off the fight or flight. They have to talk themselves off the cliff. And then they can use the tools.
Right. And how do you do that? How do you get off the cliff?
Okay. So if it's with the child, you'll hopefully identify their triggers, and possibly be aware of when they're triggering. So they might be triggering mostly on the way to school. They might be triggering most at nighttime. What if the child is slow going to sleep, what's going on there to try and catch them there? It's the wording, real sentences, but they have to be real. It can't be, oh, you're a fantastic child if they've just been suspended. It needs to be, I know you're trying hard. I know it's tough, but we'll work it out together, or it's okay. And let's list out all the people that love you. Let's think about all the positive. Let's think about how much you did, how well you succeeded in that specific thing. And, it's getting easier, and we're putting things in place. And so it's finding words, but they have to be specific to the child. You did really well at that exercise today. I love you. And then once you can talk them off the cliff, or give them tools to come off the cliff, then all the other stuff starts to help. So it's identifying their specific thing and helping them to do it. So different people have different ways of calming, and then it's identifying their specific calming technique and getting them to use that.
Wonderful. Great. Okay, good. So this is
like each topic you could just go for an hour. Yeah.
I really want to talk to you again where we have a better internet connection, because that's gonna provide a better connection for us. But I also hope that you don't pick on too much frustration over here. Like that was an example you did before. I hope it was just in the spirit of an example, because it's
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. But frustration, but that's with the technique, not with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Just saying that to any part that might be picking up on that.
Absolutely.
I also want to just mention, because we've talked a little bit about astrology, and I love weaving astrology into a conversation like this. It doesn't have to be its own chapter. We've talked about it, right? And it's the Cancer rising that's providing you with this emotionality and sensitivity in this life. And then you also mentioned Virgo, which makes sense. It's also a yin sign. However, Virgo is usually more guarded and more with boundaries, right? So why is there now the sensitivity in you? And that's because you have an opposition to Chiron in Pisces. And I'm all Pisces, right? So, it's that really open quality. So when there's an opposition, then those really have to speak together, and it's really like there's going to be some, what do we call it, tug and pull, like you are able to organize your way out of a chaotic situation, but at some point in your life, that's with the Chiron, it has definitely been a wound. Like it's maybe you even learned how to organize because of that wound, because of that tendency to disappear, switch off.
Yeah, and interesting when you talk about boundaries, it would definitely have been a challenge for me at times, but thankfully, as I've got older, I'm definitely much better at it. And it's part of the wording I would use when I'm telling myself it's safe to switch back on, because I know now at my age, it is safe to be here. I'm in a safe environment. I'm now able to speak up for myself. I have safe boundaries. If somebody's disrespectful, I'm able to say no, thank you. So it is safe for me to be present now. Whereas if you're telling a child to switch back on and it's not safe, that's their only way of coping.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's a really important point, right? To get here in the end, it's a really important point that was the only way I could cope, and that kids in general can cope.
Yeah. And so I tell that child how clever they are to have come up
Yeah.
with this in this way of being,
Yes.
because they haven't been taught it. They've
Yeah.
just worked it out for themselves. This is too hard, but I still have to do it. This is how I'm
Yeah.
going to do it.
But
And
now,
like there's a whole range of tools that they use. So some will be the withdrawn child, some will cry more than their peers, some will hit, kick, or bite because they know they don't like how they feel around that other child, even though they might have played happily with them yesterday, but today they don't like that child and they're trying to push them back or hit them back because it's almost like it's coming in and put like it's almost well it is physically they can feel it physically come in on top of them, the energy of the other child sometimes. Um, you've the wiggler, you know, that kid that keeps moving the whole time. It's like they're just trying to get somewhere where they're comfortable and there's nothing, but no matter where they go, they're still impacted. Um, you have the child that talks and they're trying to talk their day and they're trying to make sense of their day. One little boy that I fostered over the years, one little boy, it could take him 3 hours at night time before he could go to sleep because he literally had to talk through every transaction from that day, everything. He had to go back through it because it didn't make sense.
oh,
It just didn't make sense, you know? And he literally would talk back through it to try and work out, well, what happened there? You
yeah.
know, I said this, they did that, this happened, that happened, but he couldn't understand it. So he would talk himself back through everything. If he'd watched a cartoon, he had to talk back through the cartoon. Um, so I call them the download kids. It's like they literally have to download everything that happened that day to try and make sense of it and to come up with a strategic plan so that they can do tomorrow better.
Mm. I
So
I like that phrase of it. I like the phrase you used, to talk the day.
okay,
Talk the day. I
yeah,
like to talk the day. It seems very Gemini, and but definitely on, that's too much of a good thing. Yeah.
yeah. There's the people pleaser. There's the child that will try and put everything in order because
Mm.
the day isn't in order. It makes no sense. It's like they've got out of bed happy, they've got to the kitchen, they've started crying. Um, so if they can control where their teddies sit or if they can control their books, at least they can control some aspect. But then the more challenging the day, the more their need for order, and then their tool works against them instead of with them.
Mm.
So, in the scheme of things, the child that switches off, it's not the worst of them. Um,
Right.
and then,
Mm.
yeah, so it's just that this is what they're doing at the moment, and then to find other ways that they can do it instead.
Yeah. So it's all these different levels of coping.
Yeah,
And so I'm getting the idea that it can also maybe be difficult to recognize a sensitive child if they all have so different patterns.
exactly, exactly. So they can all have invented their own tools, and then they'll all have different levels of sensitivity. And even if they were all on the one level of sensitivity, they would still all be different, because we all have different senses. So Some children will be, their sensitivity and their hearing will be higher or lower. Their eyesight, they might be light sensitive. Their taste might be more acute than somebody else. They might like how food tastes, feels. And we'll often hear that child, you know, I don't like how the onion feels. I don't like the feel of it. The texture. So their sense of touch will be more sensitive. So there's a whole range of things that can change. And so they present differently. Every single sensitive child on the planet will present differently. But it's just working out then what tools suit them. And if you watch the child, they'll have come up with the tools themselves. But it's just working out how to give them healthier versions. So there's the contact child, you know, who I've seen kids where they run at the wall. They literally run at the wall, and as they hit the wall, it's like they're coming back into their body. The contact calms them, and it makes them literally feel again, feel themselves, and it's how they calm. So if it's the contact child, it's finding different tools, different activities for the contact child, so that they can replace hitting the wall with something healthy, like just saying, stop doing that, but they need something instead of it. So the contact child is fascinating because it's working out within their body what part of their body do they respond best to with contact. So some will be the tips of their fingers will calm them. Mm-hmm. Some will be a tight grip. Some will be their feet. So if it's the tips of their fingers, it'll be like giving them like tapping exercises might work with that child. In Ireland, a lot of the children, they might learn the concertina or the tin whistle. So if they're musical and they use the tips of their fingers in their musical instrument, I would get them to pretend at nighttime that they're playing their music on their lap. Right. And then they're pulling out the tune and the notes. So if you're doing D, E, F, E, D, E, then you can't be thinking, what happened yesterday? What am I going to do? What if the teacher says? You're thinking of your notes, but you're making the contact with your fingers. Some are shoulders, like if it's to do with shoulder movement. So for them kids, that it's the shoulder, it's like the kids that sing or the kids that take a deep breath. It's like where they really open out here. So it's not necessarily the singing that calms them. It's the physically bringing back their shoulders that calms them. So it's working out what is the child doing at the moment, and then finding a way of using that to their advantage. And some will be feelings and texture. So this is one of my sisters, you know, where even as a small child, the texture of her hair, where she'd be curling her hair. So a lot of kids are texture. So then it's finding a little tissue that they like the feel of, and that's in their pocket, or finding a little piece of material, or sometimes it's a stone that they like the feeling of. So it's giving them something that they like the feeling of. So if you watch the child, the tools are there, and it's just finding a version then that they can use in everyday life where people aren't going to laugh at them. So when I was a child, yes, I used to stand like a stork, kind of like the way you're sitting. So I would have one foot on the ground, and I would put my other foot in against the knee. So I would stand like the stork with one foot up and one foot in against it, what does kind of on my shin. So for me, my feet ground me and balance. So if you're standing on one foot, and then you can't be thinking what's going on around you because you're concentrating on your balance. But also the pressure is on my foot. So when I walk, that really calms me. But when I hill walk and I'm putting the pressure on the heel of my foot, then I'm completely grounded. So for me, it's my feet. I'm contact, but I'm more my feet. Some kids will be walking.
This is very key. It's key. Finding what that ingredient that will, and it's already there because that's the attempt. You're trying to get that. It's a really what's a kind of volatile image you gave there with the contact, like run into a wall, but that's kind of You're doing something to achieve something else. Like, so yeah, finding what it is that you're really looking.
Yeah. And some kids will be the logic child, and they'll be the puzzler. So that'll be the puzzles. Or then teaching that child, if they're overwhelmed in class, to give themselves a little maths problem. So if they're a small child, that maybe they can add 3 and 6 together. If they're an older child, maybe they can work out in their head 12 times 13. So if you're sitting in class going, I wonder what 12 13s are. Okay, 2 3s are 6, 2 1s are 2, and you're working down your answer. You have to come in. You have to turn off fight or flight. That can't run while you're working out the answer. So you come back in present. So the logical child, it's teaching them how to do little puzzles in their head when they're in a busy setting. Like, you want the tools to be discreet.
Oh, that's good.
Or tongue twisters, or hard words to spell. Like red leather, yellow leather, or unique New York.
Red letter, yellow letter, unique.
Yes.
New York. I have
Yeah,
to think.
see, you give them words to try and say red leather, yellow leather, or to try and say unique New York.
Unique New York. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's a twister, and so it's basically coming into the present with all of this.
Correct, and it's just teaching them easy ways, child-friendly ways, that they can just bring themselves back in and ground and be present.
Okay. Brid O'Donoghue, I'm I'm not making an excuse when I say I'm breaking up. It's breaking up. It's
okay.
It's breaking up, and there's some sounds coming from your computer, and things are
going. Dear.
But you know what? We got the message, and at least part of it, and
it is part of it.
Yes, it's part of it, and it's really great. It's really great what you're doing and what you're doing with this book, and I love how it's connected to your work with the psychic code, and now this mystery of the sensitivity here, because that's I feel that it's definitely interlinked. So thank you for that, and I'll link people to where they can find more about you and the book.
That's fabulous. So I've just managed to get my psychic code up as an audiobook, and I'm still working on the mystery of the sensitive child as an audiobook. So hopefully those won't have the same technical problems as the podcast.
Oh no, you'll be in recording in the studio and everything, I'm sure, but actually it's also, I feel it's not very long, the mystery of the sensitive. It's very how can you say, it's easy to read. I feel it's easy to read, right?
Yeah, and my hope was, like, this teenagers reading it, it's really just to make it simple, because for me it is simple. It's just an everyday thing, and it just needs understanding.
It just needs some understanding. Yeah. Care and understanding. Okay, I'm sending you that. I'm sending myself that, and everyone else who has sensitivity. Thank you so much with us.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. Lovely to meet you at last.